My uncle didn't want to make me a partner in the family business. He chose his inexperienced son instead. But now, the competition has hired me, and to them, I'm a traitor. Hi, I'm a 30-year-old woman, and recently my family has cut me off for leaving the family business and standing up to my uncle who is retiring this year. I'm here to ask if I was wrong. For context, my dad, who would have turned 63 this year, had two younger brothers, Brian, 59, and Scott, 56. They all inherited my grandfather's real estate company. My grandfather expected the three brothers to run the business together as co-owners, and for a while everything was fine. But 6 years after my grandfather retired, my uncle Scott decided to leave the company and start his own business. This led to him being cut off from the family. Nobody liked that he chose to compete with his own brothers. For the past 16 years, no one in the family has spoken to him or even acknowledged his existence. They act as if he was never part of the family. I grew up learning to do the same. 3 years ago, my dad passed away due to kidney failure. His health had already been declining, and he had been training me to take over in case he ever became bedridden. No one expected him to pass away so soon, but at least I was prepared to step into his role and take care of his responsibilities. For the past 3 years, I haven't just been doing his job. I've also been helping my uncle Brian run the business. In fact, since I graduated from business school, I had been working alongside my father and uncle, learning everything I could because I hoped to become a partner one day. I've been working there for almost 9 years now, so of course, I expected to be made a partner at some point. That's what my father wanted. But about 10 days ago, I found out that my uncle had decided to make his son a partner instead, while keeping me in my position as Chief Financial Officer, CFO. When my father was alive, he was the CEO, and my uncle was the CFO. After my father passed, my uncle took over as CEO, and I was promoted to CFO. Now that my uncle is retiring in a few years, shouldn't I be the one to take over? My cousin Din was never even in the picture. This decision completely blindsided me. Din is only 23. He just graduated a year ago with a degree in economics but has zero practical knowledge or experience. More than anything, he's just too young to be a partner. He hasn't earned it, and I know for a fact that he doesn't deserve it more than I do. Naturally, I was furious when I found out. The worst part? My uncle didn't even tell me himself. I heard it from my mother, who had overheard it from Din's mother. She said that my uncle had only given Din the position because I had supposedly turned it down, which was a complete lie. As soon as my mother told me, I called my uncle right away. I thought it was a joke. But when we spoke, he confirmed that he was seriously considering making Din the CEO and a partner in the firm because he planned to announce his retirement in a few months. I was in shock. I reminded him that Din had never worked a single day in his life. He had spent the past year finding himself and traveling, so he had absolutely no experience and was definitely not ready for this job. That's when my uncle told me, "Well, that's where you come in. You'll be his mentor, so there's nothing to worry about." Basically, they still needed me to handle everything while Din got used to the job. I would still be the CFO, but I wouldn't be made a partner. I wasn't okay with that. I told him that I had worked way too hard for the past 9 years and deserved the respect I had earned. Din definitely didn't deserve this position. I made it clear that I was unhappy with his decision. I told him that if he made Din a partner and CEO, I would quit and leave the company. My uncle tried to tell me I was overreacting, that he was just doing this to secure Din's future. He claimed that Din wouldn't settle for anything less than CEO, and he didn't want him to leave the company like Uncle Scott did. This was his only option, and he hoped I would understand. He even tried to reassure me by saying that Din would just be the nominal boss, while I would actually be running things. Supposedly, even Din would respect me. I tried to negotiate. I told him that I would accept staying on as CFO, but I wanted to be made a partner. He said he wasn't sure if he could do that. He needed to talk to Din first. I didn't care. I had done the work, and I wanted to be CEO and partner, or at least just a partner. Otherwise, I was leaving. It was an ultimatum. We argued, and finally, my uncle told me, "We live in a free country. You can do whatever you want, but my decision is final." He had already discussed it with the board, and in a few days, he would make the announcement. I could either accept it or leave. That was a horrible day for me. I realized exactly where I stood with my uncle. I had always thought we had a good relationship, but clearly I had overestimated how close we were, at least professionally. Honestly, it wasn't even surprising. Din had always been spoiled, and of course my uncle was going to choose his own son over me. I never stood a chance. I was furious about how everything played out. My mother even suggested hiring a lawyer and suing them, but I didn't want to do that. I had a better plan, one that would really piss them off. I'm sure most of you can guess what I did next. But for those who don't know, that same day, I emailed my uncle Scott. I briefly explained everything that had happened and told him I was willing to work for him if he'd have me. I wasn't going to sit around feeling sorry for myself. The only thing on my mind was getting revenge on my uncle. So I didn't hesitate. In less than 24 hours, he responded, saying he was willing to offer me the CFO position and promote me to CEO in a few years after his retirement. He agreed to make me a partner since I was willing to share everything I knew about my company to help him. A couple of days ago, we finally met in person, and it was a pretty enjoyable meeting. I only had to cut him out of my life because my parents and the rest of my family demanded it. But apart from that, I never had a bad relationship with Uncle Scott. He was always the fun uncle, and up until I was 15, we were quite close. But then, the fallout happened, and he was excluded, so I couldn't speak to him again. Until now. When I was younger, no one ever told me exactly why Uncle Scott left the family, and even now he refused to discuss it. But that was his choice, and I needed to respect it. However, he did mention he was surprised that Uncle Brian had done something like this, because when my dad was alive, he would never have dared to pull this off. Regardless, he was glad things worked out in his favor and said he would love to have me on board. He had only heard good things about me since, as direct competitors, they had kept a close eye on our operations. He knew my contributions to the company were significant and was eager to have me on his side this time. He also assured me that, unlike Uncle Brian, he didn't have any kids, so I had nothing to worry about in that regard. We finalized everything, and I resigned from my position that very day. Uncle Brian didn't seem bothered at all by my resignation. I sent him a formal message stating that I wouldn't be coming in for the next 2 weeks, as he had made it clear that the company would be fine without me. He replied that it was fine and that he had replacements ready, so I didn't need to worry about my role. That was the end of our interaction. However, yesterday, Uncle Scott and I finally posted a photo together to celebrate me joining his team. I went out for dinner with the team to meet some of the higher-ups in his company and to socialize with them before starting work. Saying that my family is falling apart would be an understatement. Since I made that post last night, I've been bombarded with texts, voice messages, and phone calls. Obviously, I haven't responded to anyone, but it's clear that people are extremely upset. Uncle Brian is furious and has already labeled me a traitor, threatening that he will make sure I face consequences for this move. He can try whatever he wants. Other family members have also condemned me, which I find odd since their messages indicate they know I did this only because they passed me over for Din. If they didn't speak out about the unfairness back then, they have no right to criticize me now. The only opinion that truly matters to me is my mom's. When I spoke with her this morning, she didn't seem happy about my decision either. This really surprised me because just a few days ago, she was insisting that I hire a lawyer to get what was rightfully mine. But now she thinks I'm going too far. She told me there's a lot of history with Uncle Scott that I don't know about, and that it's not appropriate for me to know either. This was frustrating because if they won't tell me why Uncle Scott was cut off from the family, how can I decide if I can trust him? I'm an adult woman, so I think I can handle the truth. They don't need to protect me. So far, Uncle Scott has been very kind to me, and I see no reason to cut him off. Still, my mom said the family is very upset with me, and she herself isn't happy with what I did. But if I've already made my decision, there's little she can do to change it. I tried to talk to her more, but she hung up, saying she needed to process everything that's happening. Right now, I have incredibly mixed feelings about everything. Am I wrong for joining our competitors after my uncle refused to make me a partner and chose his son over me? Edit. Some people were confused about how I landed the job at Uncle Scott's company so quickly. It was actually pure luck. His CFO was retiring in a few months, and he had been looking for someone to replace him. Luckily, I emailed him at the perfect time. That's how I got this opportunity. It feels like the stars and planets aligned for me. Also, some of you wanted to know how things were with Uncle Scott before he was cut off from the family. Honestly, it was never really that bad. When I was younger, my dad, Uncle Brian, and Uncle Scott were very close. I knew they had a huge fight, which led to Uncle Scott leaving the company and starting his own business. But to this day, I still don't know what the fight was about. No one wants to talk about it, so I can't give you that information since I don't have it myself. However, my relationship with him was always good. And I think I mentioned that in my original post too. Even now, when I reached out to him via email, his response was very cordial and warm. Honestly, I don't know why my family speaks so poorly of him. They've called him everything from cunning to narcissistic to selfish, but I've never felt that way about him in any of our interactions. I'm really confused about whom to trust. I don't want to make the mistake of trusting the wrong person again. I trusted Uncle Brian, and look where that got me. I don't want the same thing to happen with Uncle Scott. Since my mom isn't exactly happy with me right now, I really don't know who to turn to for advice. I can't talk to my friends about this because it's too personal and complicated. Update 1. It's been 3 days since everyone found out I'm working with Uncle Scott. After the initial backlash, people have just stopped talking to me. I guess it makes sense. Now that I'm associated with Uncle Scott, they're treating me the same way they treated him. Honestly, I still have no idea what happened between them all those years ago, but I've already chosen my side and there's no turning back. To be honest, I don't even care about their history anymore. It's not like I can just quit and go back to working with Uncle Brian. I need a job to support myself and maintain the lifestyle I'm used to. And I need a lot of money, obviously. So, whatever the case, this is where I am now, and I'm going to make the most of it. I talked to Uncle Scott about how the family has been treating me like an outcast. He seemed really sad, but told me that this was exactly what happened to him. He said that with time, I'll move on too. Maybe I'll even have better luck than he did since I'm from the younger generation, and they might reach out to me eventually. But until then, I just have to endure it and deal with it. Once again, I asked him what really happened to cause all of this, but he refused to talk about it. My mom still hasn't spoken to me, which hurts the most. I've been texting her every day, but I haven't gotten a single response. I'm going to be really busy with work over the next few days, since I just started and have a lot to catch up on. If she wants to talk to me, she can message me herself. But other than that, I'm done trying to reach out. Update 2. It's been 6 days since I started working with Uncle Scott, and things have been going pretty well. The paperwork to make me a partner is still being processed, but I trust him completely. He has treated me with nothing but warmth and respect so far. Honestly, I even feel more comfortable here than I did at my old company. I guess I have to say it. Everyone in my family was wrong about him. He has been very transparent with me about everything. He explained that, unlike my previous company, his business isn't private, so he needs the board's approval before finalizing anything related to me. But he told me not to worry because, as the owner and CEO, it's just a formality, and I have nothing to be concerned about. I've already met most of the people associated with the company, and they all seem to like me. They know about my previous work and recognize my value. Just like Uncle Scott said, I'm not too worried about this, and I'm just focusing on my job. Work-wise, things are going great, but my personal life? It's a complete mess right now. My mom and I still haven't spoken since our last conversation, and I've lost track of how many days it's been. I've been feeling really alone. No one else in the family has talked to me either. It's been hard, but I'm trying to deal with it. I still have some friends from Uncle Brian's company, and they've been keeping me updated on what's happening over there. Apparently, they officially announced my departure, but they left out the part about me going to work with Uncle Scott. Probably because it wouldn't look good for the company if someone in my position left to join their direct competitor. They also announced that Din will take over as CEO in a few months when Uncle Brian retires, and that he will also become a partner. They're even throwing a company party in his honor in a few days. As for my vacant CFO position, they gave it to one of the employees who always had issues following my leadership. I know they did that on purpose just to get under my skin. But honestly, it just made me feel sorry for them. If that employee had issues with me, I'm pretty sure they'll have issues with them too. It's only a matter of time. But that's their problem now. Anyway, I spoke with my friends at the company and told them they were free to join me at Uncle Scott's firm. We can offer them better salaries. In the end, it's their decision, but I can tell that some of them really want to make the move. They're unsure about all the changes happening and feel it might be best to leave while they still can. So I made the offer. Now, let's see who switches sides. Update 3. It's been almost a month since I started working with Uncle Scott, and things have been going really well. I'm now officially the CFO and also a partner in the company. I'm really happy about it, and even though my mom still isn't speaking to me, I feel like I've moved on. There's also more good news. Some of my friends from my old company have quit their jobs and applied here to work with me. Uncle Scott is thrilled about it. Uncle Brian, however, is even more pissed off. A few days ago, after nearly 4 employees resigned to join us, he showed up at my house with Din. I had just gotten home when my doorbell started ringing. When I saw it was them, I spoke to them through the intercom and told them to leave. I knew they were here to confront me about the fact that I had talked to a few employees and influenced their decision to leave. But I told them that I hadn't forced or pressured anyone. These people made their own choices. I knew they were just looking for an excuse to blame me, but even they knew this wasn't my fault. Uncle Brian completely lost it. He started yelling at me from outside my door, accusing me of stealing his employees and saying it wasn't fair. He even threatened to take legal action against me for manipulating his staff. I'm pretty sure that's not even grounds for a lawsuit, but I let him scream until he ran out of breath. There was no point in trying to argue with him while he was yelling so loudly that he couldn't even hear me. When he finally seemed out of breath, I calmly told him to leave, or I would be forced to call the police. With the way people were quitting, I was pretty sure they didn't want even more employees leaving because they seemed mentally unstable. That's when Din suddenly spoke up. He told me that this wasn't the way to treat someone who had been there for me after my dad passed away. He called me insensitive and selfish, saying I had no respect for what his father had done for my family. I found the whole thing pompous and ridiculous. I told him I respected Uncle Brian just as much as Uncle Brian respected me. Then I reminded him that my dad had worked incredibly hard to build the company into what it is today. And after his passing, I had also put in a lot of effort. The only person who had never done anything was Din. So he had no right to stand here lecturing me. At least Uncle Brian had actually earned his place. But Din, he was simply handed his position as an act of charity because Uncle Brian didn't want him to leave the company and work elsewhere since it was a family business. Then, I told him exactly what Uncle Brian had said when he gave Din the CEO position. If you remember from my original post, my uncle told me the only reason he was giving Din the role and not me was because his son wanted it, even though he knew I deserved it more. He just wanted to spoil his kid. He even admitted that Din would just be the nominal head, but I would actually be running the company. I remembered it clearly, and I made sure to mention it to Din, so he would know exactly where he stood with his father. Silence. I heard them whispering to each other, then their footsteps as they walked away and left. My work was done. Now they could figure it out between themselves, but at least they would leave me alone. The next morning, I woke up to find that they had both blocked me. And honestly, that made me really happy. Life is getting better now. I know my dad would have been really upset by everything that has happened, but at least I have the satisfaction of knowing that none of this was my fault. Uncle Brian got greedy and pushed me out. If anyone is to blame for this situation, it's him. I'm completely sure of that now, so no one can try to make me feel guilty or doubt myself anymore. The only person I still have hope for is my mom. I really hope she comes around eventually. We've always had a great relationship, especially after my dad passed away. We became even closer. I miss her every day, and I keep thinking that maybe she'll send me a message at some point. But so far, no luck. At least she hasn't blocked me, so maybe the door is still open. I might try reaching out to her if I start missing her too much. But for now, I'm just trying to figure out what to do next. Update 4. It's been almost 6 months since my last update, and a lot has changed. First, Uncle Brian has officially retired, and Din has taken over the company. So far, he's just keeping things the same and hasn't made any major changes. Maybe things will work out for them after all. But honestly, I don't really care anymore. Since then, a lot of former employees have joined us, and I'm really happy about it. It's nice to see so many familiar faces in my new company. My mom and I still haven't spoken, but now I might finally have a reason for that. A few weeks ago, I was having dinner and drinks with Uncle Scott and his wife. After a while, my aunt left the room to rest, and I finally decided to ask him about what really happened between him and the family. Now that I'm an adult and we work together, I felt like I had the right to know. And he finally told me. Years ago, during Thanksgiving at our house, my mom tried to start an affair with him. She asked him to help her in the kitchen, so he followed, not knowing what was about to happen. Once they were alone, she told him she wanted something more with him. Even though she was married to my dad, she had always had her eye on Uncle Scott. He immediately tried to back away, but just then, my dad walked into the kitchen and caught them standing close together. My mom lost it. She started accusing Uncle Scott of making a move on her. I don't remember any of this because Din and I were in our rooms, but my dad completely lost his temper and kicked Uncle Scott out of the house that day. Later, we were told that Uncle Scott had to leave because of a work emergency. But after that day, my mom made up a bunch of lies to cover up what had really happened so no one would believe him. She even told Uncle Brian and my dad that Uncle Scott had been planning to steal money from the company to start his own business. Eventually, my dad and Uncle Brian confronted him and told him they would destroy him if he didn't leave on his own. So he walked away from the company and started his own business. Since then, he has had nothing to do with the family. After hearing all of this, I decided that it was best to follow in his footsteps and cut ties with my family as well. It was heartbreaking to learn this about my mom, but it is what it is. I've accepted the truth, and this is my life now. Update 5. I'm back with more updates on my life over the past 8 months. First, I've had no contact with my mom. I actually have her blocked. So if she has tried to text or call me, I wouldn't know. But I haven't reached out either. She knows where I live, so she could have come to see me if she really wanted to. I guess she must be feeling ashamed that I know the truth, which just makes her look even more guilty in my opinion. But honestly, it's for the best. As for my job, things couldn't be going better. It was tough at first adjusting to this new phase in my life, but I finally feel comfortable. My position here is similar to my old one, but adjusting to how things work in a different company took some time. Things aren't done the same way everywhere. For now, I haven't been promoted to CEO, but that's okay. Not only am I making more money in this job, but I also have a lot more work than I did at my old company. Why? Because Uncle Brian's company, which is now run by Din, has been losing clients. And well, our company has been taking them in. This is mainly due to Din's lack of experience. Sure, he has a good education and went to a great university, but there's a huge gap between theory and practice. There's even a rumor going around in the industry that they might remove him from the CEO position and replace him with someone else. That someone definitely won't be me. I'm way too happy in my new position. Not that I think they would ask me anyway. To them, I'm still an outcast. But that's a little glimpse into what's been happening in my life, at least in terms of work. As for my personal life, well, I still don't have much contact with my family, but I've gotten used to it.